A missile reportedly struck Tel Aviv overnight, and this time something was different about it. Curious. What's actually happening on the ground? Who fired it, and why does it matter for the broader conflict unfolding across West Asia right now? Stay with us, because this story is more layered than the headlines suggest. Good evening, and welcome. I'm your anchor for today's coverage. Tonight, we're breaking down the latest reports coming out of Tel Aviv following what appears to be a significant missile incident, one that fits into a much larger and rapidly evolving picture across West Asia. Serious. We're going to walk you through what we know, what's being claimed, and what it could mean going forward. As always, we'll keep this factual, measured, and clear. If you're new to this channel, now's a good time to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We cover breaking international developments like this one every day, and you don't want to miss what comes next in this story. Let's get into it. To understand what happened in Tel Aviv, you need to understand the context. We are now more than 3 weeks into an active and escalating military confrontation involving Israel, Iran, Lebanon, and the broader West Asia region. This is not a new conflict. The roots run deep, but the current phase of fighting represents a significant intensification that began roughly 25 days ago. Israel and the United States have been conducting coordinated strikes on Iranian military infrastructure. According to Israeli military claims, more than 3,000 targets inside Iran have been hit over this period. That figure, if accurate, is extraordinarily high for this time frame, suggesting a sustained and aggressive campaign targeting what Israeli and American officials describe as missile storage facilities, command centers, and mobile launch systems. Iran, for its part, has been responding. Not retreating, responding. Despite operating under a near-total internet blackout that makes independent verification extremely difficult, Iranian forces appear to have continued launching projectiles at Israeli territory and maintaining a strong posture in the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most strategically critical waterways. And then there's Lebanon. To Israel's north, the situation has been deteriorating steadily. Israeli forces have been conducting strikes on Beirut and southern Lebanon. Reports suggest more than 1,000 people have been killed in Lebanon so far, and over 1 million have been displaced from their homes. Israeli ground forces are reportedly advancing toward the Litani River, which Israel appears to view as a strategic boundary for establishing what its defense minister described as a forward line of defense. This is the backdrop against which the Tel Aviv missile incident must be understood. Overnight, reports indicate that Iran launched a fresh wave of missiles. At least one of these projectiles appears to have struck Tel Aviv, with several buildings reportedly damaged and at least 6 people injured, according to available information. A second missile reportedly impacted northern Israel around the same time. What makes this particular launch notable, beyond the damage itself, is what reports suggest about the missiles themselves. According to available information, some of these projectiles reportedly featured imagery related to the current geopolitical moment, suggesting a psychological and symbolic dimension to the strike beyond its military purpose. Whether this represents a new Iranian tactic or an isolated incident remains unclear. What does appear clear is that Iran's projectiles are, on some occasions, breaching Israel's Iron Dome defense system. This is a development that analysts have been watching closely. The Iron Dome is highly effective, but it is not impenetrable. And if Iran is adapting its tactics to exploit gaps in that system, the implications for Israeli civilian safety could be significant going forward. Meanwhile, in the Gulf region, projectiles were reportedly fired towards Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Bahrain, though no significant damage has been confirmed in those areas as of the latest reports. And in the Strait of Hormuz, Iranian military presence reportedly remains strong. Iranian officials have stated publicly that they see no need to lay naval mines in the Persian Gulf, citing what they describe as sufficient dominance in the region. Whether that confidence is warranted or a strategic posture remains a matter of debate among analysts. Several key developments deserve specific attention. First, the Lebanon escalation. The reported advance of Israeli ground forces toward the Litani River marks a significant shift from air-based operations to potential ground occupation. French President Emmanuel Macron addressed this directly, warning publicly that occupation, in his words, cannot lead to peace. His remarks referenced not only Lebanon but also the West Bank, drawing a comparison that signals growing international unease about the long-term trajectory of Israel's military operations. The concern being raised by multiple world leaders is straightforward. How long would any Israeli presence in southern Lebanon last? History, including the decades-long occupation of the West Bank, suggests this is not an abstract question. Second, the Iranian domestic situation. Iran's internet blackdown makes it genuinely difficult to assess conditions inside the country. What we do know is that large public gatherings have been reported in Tehran, with participants expressing strong opposition to the current military campaign. The Iranian government appears to be on heightened internal alert. This suggests that while Iran continues to project military confidence externally, the situation internally may be under pressure. Third, and perhaps most consequentially, there are reports suggesting that diplomatic communication is ongoing behind the scenes. President Donald Trump has reportedly acknowledged a desire to reach a deal with Iran rather than fight this conflict to an indefinite conclusion. This is a significant signal. It suggests that for all the military activity, both sides may be looking for an off-ramp. The question is what that off-ramp looks like and who can help broker it. It's important to consider this situation from several angles. From Israel's perspective, the military campaign is framed as a necessary response to existential threats. The continued missile launches, including the one that reportedly struck Tel Aviv, are cited as evidence that those threats are real and ongoing. Israeli officials argue that without dismantling Iran's missile capabilities and establishing a buffer in southern Lebanon, Israeli civilians cannot live in safety. From Iran's perspective, this is fundamentally a fight for regime survival. The scale of strikes being reported, thousands of targets in under a month, represents enormous pressure on their military infrastructure. Iran's continued response could be seen as both a deterrent signal and a domestic necessity. Backing down entirely could destabilize the regime from within. From the perspective of Lebanon's civilian population, the situation is a humanitarian crisis. Over 1 million displaced people, more than 1,000 reported deaths, and the prospect of a prolonged ground occupation represent a catastrophe that is drawing increasing international condemnation. And from the broader international community, including France and potentially others, the concern is that military escalation without a clear diplomatic framework risks producing outcomes that no one can fully control. Several scenarios appear possible from here, though all of them carry significant uncertainty. A negotiated pause remains possible if back-channel talks produce enough common ground. Reports of Trump's desire for a deal, combined with Iran's apparent openness to some form of resolution, could suggest that a framework is being quietly built. However, the gap between what each side would accept may still be very wide. An escalation in Lebanon appears likely in the near term, given the reported movement of Israeli ground forces. Whether this remains a limited operation or expands into something larger will depend heavily on how Hezbollah and Iran choose to respond, and reports suggest threats of heavy missile strikes on Israeli northern positions are already being issued. The situation in the Strait of Hormuz could also become a flashpoint. If Iran's maritime posture hardens or global shipping faces disruption, the economic and diplomatic pressure on all parties could accelerate in either direction. What we are watching across West Asia right now is a conflict that is simultaneously military and diplomatic. Missiles and meetings, strikes and back-channel signals. The Tel Aviv incident overnight is one data point in a deeply complex picture that is still being written in real time. What appears certain is that the coming days will be critical for the people on the ground bearing the cost of this conflict, for the governments calculating their next moves, and for the international community trying to find a path that leads somewhere other than further escalation. The question worth sitting with is this: in a conflict where both sides say they want a deal, why does the fighting keep intensifying? The answer to that question may tell us everything about how and when this ends.